You have tuned in to the Pittsburgh Steelers show on your SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Wil Masisak, a.k.a. Bradshaw to Ben, also known as Accidental Zen on Twitter. If you're fighting with me, you'll know. I'm just a defender of the truth and of the underserved on Twitter, Perch. I know that that's why you got yourself banned as well. Speaking of which, are with us tonight from somewhere in Pittsburgh suburban zone 22. Actually, today, God, it feels like night. It's dark out here. His name is SteelPerch. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Glad to be back.
Glad to be back. We're glad to have you back. And also, although, if the Steelers win when you're not here, it's tempting to not include you ever again. So just bear that in mind.
Hey, they win when I'm here.
Lately, yes. And also with us, Mr. Doesn't Miss a Show. His name is Dom, goes by FC. He's with us. How are you, sir?
I am absolutely fantastic.
I'll bet you are. Last night, if you're a Penguins fan and a Steelers fan, last night was pretty good because you got your Pens win against the best team in hockey, and you got not only that, it was a very entertaining style of game, and then you had the Ravens actually not being able to be either aided by the officials or bailed out by their kicker, nor have their Superman quarterback able to overcome the deficit that they faced against the lowly Miami Dolphins. First of all, before we even talk about Steelers, Perch, does this mean that Jim Harbaugh is a terrible coach for losing to a bad team? How could he not get his team up for facing the 2-7 Dolphins?
Yeah, I mean, look around the league. I'll throw that stat out. Of the teams that were 10-point favorites in the last 2 weeks, they're 1-4. They've outright lost almost every game. There's so much parity in the NFL. Short week, Thursday night, road game sorts of things. It happens to everybody, but yeah, I mean, if he was our coach, I'd be killing him right now.
I mean, FC, I think there's something to the fact that it's also that time of year where there's buys. So teams either, tired that haven't gotten their bye or just came off their bye and they lost their momentum, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like there's more upsets this time of year. Do you feel like the results play that out?
I do. There's a lot of things I think went into it. Thursday game, short week. The Dolphins played their Super Bowl. I don't know how many offenses would have been effective yesterday against the Dolphins, especially in the first half. It was one of the better defensive team performances I've seen this year. And you got to give Fuentes and his staff credit. They crafted a pretty good game plan. Fuentes, went with the hook on Brissett. Got, a little bit of juice out of Tua. Ravens dropped a couple coverages, and that defense played lights out yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's the formula. And having the short week definitely helps them. But I think you hit it that they played their Super Bowl. The Dolphins did more or less. But yeah, it's kind of like I just feel it's useful to watch the quote unquote number 2 offense in the NFL struggle like that. And in a way, you look at that game, it's like they arguably looked worse, played worse as an offense than the Steelers typically look during this season. So it's kind of like, if the Ravens can look like that, if they get, the right sort of matchup on the right night, it's sort of amazing that the Steelers are able to be better than that sometimes, It's like, most people would say that they have the Ravens have the advantages, and they had all their wide receivers last night, like they kind of were fully loaded. So it can happen even to really good teams. To that end, since we're on the theme of that topic, the Steelers managed to not lose their game against a 6.5-point underdog, but they sure as hell made it interesting. Perch, what'd you make of that Monday night victory? Are you glass half full or half empty on that one?
I'm all the way full because they won how they always win, right? They get a nice lead against a bad team. They juice it up to a couple scores, and every single Steelers fan in the world says, "Oh shit, here it comes." They're never going to put a team away, ever. It's not going to happen. It's just not in their DNA. They're going to find a way to make it close, and then they're going to nut up and be clutch in the end and come back down and score the game-winning thing. I swear, out of Ben's 50 game-winning drives that he's led in his career, probably 40 of them were unnecessary. where they had a lead and then blew it and then to do something miraculous. It wasn't like they were coming from behind the whole game. They were coming from in front, and then they, decided to let the other team back in for TV ratings or whatever the hell their angle is here. They're finessing something on us, right? But I mean, hey, a win's a win. And you look around the league, and just like we just talked about Baltimore, and we got the Lions coming up. The Lions had Baltimore beat, and
yeah,
the Jags basically just shut out Buffalo, who everybody's saying is clearly the best team in the AFC. Everybody in the AFC sucks. Most everybody in the NFC sucks. They're all equal. So it's going to come down to who's got a really good defense, who takes care of the ball, and who's clutching that last 5 minutes of a football game. And those are things that Tomlin's Steelers are good at. So we're going to win a lot of ugly games, and people are going to say we're lucky and we suck and we cheat. But that's just, that's what the NFL is this year. There isn't any dominant teams, and even the ones that do look dominant can be beat by a bad team the next week. It's really going to come down. This whole season's going to come down to who can win those ugly games, and that's kind of what Steelers football is, playing ugly.
Yeah, FC, a good friend of the show from Pitt with Love, he just texted me during the game and said they should put this game in a time capsule so that when aliens come down and ask, what was Steelers football like, that they'll be able to have this example. And he wrote that with like a full quarter left in the game. And he predicted successfully that the defensive breakdowns are coming, and then the clutch bend drive at the end of the game. It's just like chef's kiss. Was this just a typical Steelers win that we should just be, should we just start accepting that this is what a Steelers win looks like and not worry about the style points?
Absolutely. I honored Perch with my prediction last week with the Steelers blowout and Steelers win by 3 points. I'm going to pick up what Perch was laying down because he hit the nail on the head in my opinion. I think the one thing that's being a little bit two things are being overlooked from the Bears, which Perch hit pretty well. Let's also not forget the Rams got beat, when they were supposedly big favorites. And the biggest thing that's getting overlooked is, how about Chris Boswell? That was my biggest concern coming into the game. He got scrambled. He nailed 250-yard plus field goals, nails the 45-yarder to win the game. It was a solid performance, and anybody that complains about the Steelers, cheating and blah, blah, blah. I went back and I looked because I was screaming the entire game that the Bears were lining up offsides. And I honestly think that they did it 19 times in the game between Robert Quinn and the other outside pass rusher. And I said to myself, why aren't they throwing the flags? And I think it was something that Tomlin really got on them at halftime before the second half kickoff, and you had a lot of calls. And he was obviously offside, a good foot at times offside.
Yeah, more like I kind of was going through his shoulder pads, which you don't often see guys that far offside in the NFL. I wish he had gotten in their ears about the Bears' offensive line pulling out early pretty much on every play in the second half, because it might have been useful to have a couple of calls there too. But on that note, Perch, the thing that everybody wanted to talk about after the game was the kind of some controversial penalty calls that favored the Steelers. The taunting call against Cassius Marsh, who's making a real name for himself in Steelers Nation these days. The roughing the passer call against Alex Highsmith, and then the low block call. For me, the low block call that took back the touchdown was really, egregious. The other two, I think, ranged from, sometimes that happens, or this is what they're calling this year and the way they call it. How did you make out the controversial calls in this game? And, are you going to factor that into the Steelers winning, or you just figure they don't win anyway, despite the calls?
Well, the biggest factor in the Steelers winning a close game is their little midget idiot kick returner not being able to hold on to a ball up 2 scores late in the game and trying to spin for an extra yard when it's completely necessary. But I won't get into that yet. Anyway, we all know that the NFL has put out this, edict that they're going to shut down taunting. And I didn't know until, Kohlman mentioned it in his interviews that basically came from the coaches. This is something that the coaches in the off-season meetings and the competition committee said that's something they want to get out of the game. You know why? Maybe they eliminate some of the chippiness. Somebody starts talking trash, and then their guy goes and gets a penalty. Then there's fighting, and then he mentioned stuff about being a role model for the kids and do it for the children and all that crap. But we know you can't taunt. Okay, so he did his stupid little, dollar store version of T.J. Watt's sack dance. He ran towards the Steelers sideline, did that, then took 3 or 4 more steps. You can get called for that. I mean, if I was the commissioner of the NFL, would I ever call that? Hell no. It's not something I'd want to be enforced. Let the guys do their thing. But it's a point of emphasis here, and it's not the only game that you see that called. It's my same thing with my gripe on every single college football game. Any tackle that comes anywhere close to touching the helmet, whether it's intentional or not. I mean, I've seen guys go down to the ground to try and make an ankle tackle, and the running back lower their head, and they collide heads, and guys getting thrown out of the games for it. It's just, that's the point of emphasis of college. Get the head out of the game. In the NFL this year, it is don't taunt. That one against Watt where the guy basically dove at his knees. If you're behind that play and you see that, I think that's, a legitimate thing to call. Yeah, he whiffed and missed, so they probably shouldn't have called it. I don't think it's, that huge of a thing. But like FC said, not just in the Bears game, but how many NFL games do you watch where that tackle is taken 2 steps before the ball is snapped? It's almost every game. The tackles from Baltimore do it constantly too. And you watch games and it's like, why is this guy allowed to get those 2 steps? And TJ Watt's been, voicing his frustration on it. So, maybe the defender's way to counter that is like, screw it, I'll just line up off sides if they're going to let this guy, take 2 steps before the ball snapped. But yeah, I mean, the officiating in all levels of football has got its quirks, and you've got to adjust to it. And, a couple of calls in the game went against the Steelers that maybe shouldn't have to, but, it is what it is. If the Steelers don't fumble that kickoff return, none of those calls really play that big of a factor in the game.
Yeah, I completely agree about that last point. Real quick. Yeah. Jay Glazer, actually, who is one of the 2 people that I listen to, actually put up the NFL rules and the NFL the memo that they sent out. And to handle 2 of the 3 calls, if a player turns, an opposing player turns and faces the opposing bench to celebrate on the field of play, that is taunting. So it's absolutely the correct call. The tackle box, where you're allowed to go low, is dictated by the inside of the tackle's foot. So on the right tackle, it would begin at his left foot. On the right tackle, for the left tackle, it would be his right foot. So even though there wasn't a ton of contact made, that was also the correct call. And Jay Glazer's really not the biggest Steeler fan in the world, but he vehemently defended both of Tony Corrente's calls. And after reading the memo, absolutely both were the right calls. If they were made against the Steelers, I'd be throwing a shit fit. But on the letter of the law, they were correct. Highsmith should have been penalized. Well, as I said earlier in the week, to anyone who would listen, these kind of calls, happen to every team. They have a way of evening out unless you're the Patriots, So with that note, Perch, the Steelers, the kind of narrative of the last month, the reason the Steelers have been resurgent and have won all these games in a row was because they've finally gone back to their roots and, focused on running the football with Najee Harris, and they've been successful in all of these games, and that allowed, Ben to not have to do anything, and they play good defense and win games. On the offensive side of the ball for the Steelers in this game, is it just me, or does it feel like they really weren't able to do much running the football despite a lot of attention paid to it? I'm not really, if I think about it, I'm not really sure how the Steelers won this game, how they put up the points that they did. Explain to me how the Steelers managed to do that without really running the football very well, nor pass protecting very well, nor having Chase Claypool for some of the game.
Yeah, I mean, the big issue, Kendrick Green just can't handle size. And when you've got somebody like the Bears who've got a couple good, heavy defensive tackles, it kind of kills both your run game and your pass game. But I mean, during this 4-game win streak now, Ben's got 250 yards a game passing, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a quarterback rating around 110. He's thrown for about 7.5 yards, per pop. So there's some good things going on there, and that's kind of what the formula to win is going to be: is play good defense and come up with a turnover or two, which Cam Hayward getting an interception and showing our defensive backs how it's done. Things like that where you get the short field, and they've been so efficient in the red zone too, where they've got it down there early in the game and they were able to punch those in for touchdowns instead of field goals. And when your kicker doesn't miss these long field goals either, the points just start stacking up. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be games where Najee isn't able to get 5 yards of carry and consistently carry it 20-25 times, and other games where we've seen where they've thrown in the ball 9 or 10 times too. But, if you eliminate the turnovers, if you can kind of mix and match, and they did some of that jet sweep stuff to pick up some third downs and move the chains, and, they did what they need to do. This isn't an offense that's going to go out and throw it for 500 yards and put up 40 points in a game. But if they can play complementary football, if they can protect the ball, they can consistently make some first downs and move some chains and not have 3 and outs and keep the D fresh and get a couple turnovers, then yeah, you could see them score 29 points like they did against the Bears.
I mean, I heard at least 4 guys after the game who used the phrase complementary football. So I think it's the message that has gotten through somehow. FC, can you explain to me what the Steelers are attempting to do on 3rd and 4th and short? Because okay, Ben's shoulders are hurt right now. Maybe it's not the best idea to have him take hits on the quarterback sneak, but even so, it seemed like they were running Najee Harris up the middle into 10 guys on the line of scrimmage. Are we not allowed to use a play action to the tight end or to run some sort of misdirection play there? What is happening on 3rd and 4th and short with the Steelers? Because it just seems so predictable right now.
They're getting stopped because they're so predictable. I have no idea why on a few occasions we have gone run pass option and hit a quick slant. What I don't understand is why we don't stress the edge of the defense more with the running game. I think part of the problem is we have one tight end that's a pretty good blocker in Fairmouth. He's a high effort guy, but Raiders garbage. Zach or Eric Ebron, Miles will line up in the slot because he ain't blocking nobody. And if you go to the 3rd offensive tackle, it becomes very obvious what you're attempting to do. So it even limits you more. So instead of having the strong safety in the box, you have the strong safety and the free safety in the box, and you're facing 10-man fronts. I think part of the issue is, Ben is dinged up. The Steelers really don't want to run quarterback sneak. So there's a lot of times that I question what the Steelers are attempting to do. But the reason I think that we're having some success now is Ben has the ability to kill the play or, with the run pass option, give a nod to the wide receiver on 3rd and 4, run the quick slant. It's there all day, get 6 yards. And I think that's what they've started to do over the last month and why they've had some success offensively.
I mean, Perch, just as a follow-up on the same subject, it's not like they have to do jet sweeps and trick plays on 4th and 3rd and short. But, I guess it feels like it's really putting themselves behind the 8 ball when the whole defense knows you're going to run it up, you're going to hand it off to Najee and go up the middle. And I just don't know why you would want to give a defense that kind of advantage.
Yeah, they just lack a certain amount of creativity in those type of situations where, a play action pass where, you see all these other games that we all watch a ton of football, whether it's, collegiate or professional, where they scheme something where somebody sneaks open, where it's, a 3rd tight end pops out of the formation and is unguarded and nice, easy dump off pass. A fullback comes out in the flat, something like that. They just don't, we're going to run it or we're going to come out in passing formation and we're going to pass it, but there's not a lot of, good misdirection, creativity sort of stuff with the game plan. And when you've got a center who struggles with size and doesn't have a ton of power, and you're trying to power it in those fourth and short situations. Tell you what, a lot of the ones that Najee is converting last year would not have been converted with James Conner or Benny Snell, because Najee's just a little bit slippery enough, or he's just got just enough balance to keep on his feet to, squiggle through and dive for that yard that last season we just would have got stuffed and punted or turned it over on fourth down. So, Najee himself has helped out a lot there, but yeah, we're definitely not helping him with our blocking up front. We're the play calling.
I mean, obviously, I think in a way, watching the games and listening to us talk about it, I feel like it's almost remarkable that the Steelers offense is as good as it is, because, man, they really could use those 2 or 3 plays a game where they get something easy to happen. And it just feels like nothing is easy. It didn't feel like, in addition to the problems with, their young offensive line players struggling in certain kind of matchups, the wide receivers don't seem to get open. The guys that are supposed to be 50-50 guys don't necessarily catch the ball in those situations. In a way, like I said, I continue to be amazed they scored as many points as they did, because it's sort of ugly.
Oh, it's more than sort of ugly. It's ugly. What I don't understand is how bad of a player in reality is Derek Watt. Because every third one, unless I'm spreading them out, I go I formation, not 2 tight ends. Throw the ball to the fullback. Nobody ever covers the fullback anymore. If you have any doubts and you watched the Pitt game yesterday, 2 of the touchdowns went to tight ends, uncovered, inside the red zone on 3rd and 1. So the creativity is a problem. Perch really hit the nail on the head with Kendrick Green on the inside runs. I don't know if he's ever going to grow into being a much bigger man. I think he'll learn a little bit more the tricks of the trade, and he may be better off at guard in the future, and we may end up having to draft a center down the line, which is a pretty good center draft coming up over the next 2 years. But the Steelers have talent. It's just we're sitting here. We win if the Steelers win this week. We're tied for first place, and the offense is really an enigma at this point. If they really start to put things together a little bit more, it could be a decent team.
Yeah,
they're winning ugly. It's better to win ugly than to be sitting here like Ravens fans are, or Bills fans are, or Rams fans are, where they lost.
Yeah, very true. I mean, I bet, and also winning ugly in a way can portend better things for the future in a way, than if you win easily and then when you're challenged, you don't know what to do. So
sort of like last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And they also better to get better as the season goes on than to start off strong and peter out, for sure. Defensively for the Steelers against the Bears, Perch, I know this is a Steelers formula that's happened over and over again, and it never gets old. It's you dominate the opponent, especially at the line of scrimmage. You dominate a young quarterback. They can't do anything. They're pretty much shut down, shut out. And then late in the game, you give up a couple of big plays, and all before you know it, they're back in the game. The difference was with this one that they actually made a couple of big plays down the field, enough to actually take the lead in this game. One thing I noticed, and I'm not sure if you did, was if you remember, there was a play on that next to last drive the Bears had, or one of the last drives the Bears had, where they had a player running free downfield, and it was a cover 3 coverage, but they were disguising it by having Arthur Millette line up in the slot, and then he took off and tried to cover the deep third, and the very fast guy for the Bears, who I'm flaking on his name right now.
Mooney?
Goodwin?
From Buffalo.
Yeah, the one that used to be in Buffalo, exactly. Ran by him free on the sideline, and the ball was just way overthrown. They went right back to that coverage like 2 plays later and gave up the big play because the quarterback was able to hit the throw. Perch, here's what I'm about to ask you. It's like, is it what they're calling on defense that's allowing teams to come back in the second half of the game? Are they just stubborn about what they're doing? Or is it just that you can't hold a team down in the NFL for that long?
It's a bit of both. It really seemed like they have so much fear of a running quarterback that they're going to do things to, single high safety and bring an extra guy in the box and hide coverages like that to kind of, push that quarterback into thinking, well, I better throw it because I'm not going to be able to run here because the box has got so many guys in it. And that part of it's just dumb on the Steelers' part, where you kind of need to go a little bit more conservative. The other team is down a couple scores. I can't remember the other game earlier in the year. The team was down a couple scores and threw it deep on us and came back. But
Denver.
Same thing kind of happened with that.
Denver.
That was right, Denver. Same sort of thing, where another mobile quarterback. They were just trying to keep things stuffed in the box. But boy, you're up 14. I mean, I think you could play two deep safeties and prevent some of that stuff. And you can't let the team just march down the field in 2 or 3 passes and score a touchdown and cut the lead down to a single score game because you're afraid of a quarterback running for 10 yards. That sort of thing. I think there could be some cleaning up of some of the play call stuff there. And it's not like that's happening in the first quarter when it's a tie game or, in the middle of the game somewhere where it's still close. You're up a couple scores. You got to prevent that, the big chunk plays. And that seems to be, they're not giving up the big chunk plays first, second, third quarter. It seems to be late when they're up big, when you should never give up the chunk plays. That's when they're giving them up. So that to me kind of points to the defensive coordinator needing to get his head out of his ass.
I mean, FC, how do you see this issue? Because obviously it's like there's a big difference in this game if they don't just think, hey, a 10-point lead is big enough, both offensively and defensively. But I mean, A, is it ever going to change? And B, what do you think they're doing wrong?
I think defensively we may have too many cooks in the kitchen. With the Millette coverage on Godwin, I've seen it before, and it was done in Minnesota, and it was done in Tampa. And the only reason I know this is because Mark Schroep, who's another great guy to watch break things down, is a Steelers fan, and he breaks down 10 plays from around the NFL on Twitter every Wednesday. And he actually showed it happen in Minnesota and Tampa, the exact same coverages, and those teams having problems with it. And the commonality there is Mike Tomlin. I think Mike Tomlin should let Keith Butler maybe do a little bit more with the defense and maybe be a little less intrusive. I think we're trying to maybe do a little bit too much. The Dick LeBeau, he who tries to cover everything covers nothing.
Yeah.
Reference. And a big problem that I see is the Steelers blitz game doesn't get there hardly at all. Now I know we're not blitzing a ton, but if TJ Watt doesn't get it done, Cameron Hayward is playing a whale of a season, drawing constant double teams. I mean, Highsmith, he really he isn't having a great year by any stretch of the imagination.
Just remember, FC. Just remember, he's Clark Hagan's. He's not going to be TJ Watt or Bud Dupree. So
I understand that.
He still hit.
Clark Hagan's actually finished 8-9 sacks a season. I don't see Highsmith on that pace. I think he has 3 through 9 games.
Well, 8, but yeah, I mean 8.
What's that?
Only 8 games.
Okay. Right.
But yeah, I think he's a 6 to 8 sack guy a year.
With the way teams are blocking up the Steelers front, he needs to be more effective because TJ Watt is getting a chip and he's getting the right tackle or the tight end. You have Cameron Hayward that's definitely drawn, a guard, and they are shifting and sliding the line towards him. When Tua returns, that's going to be a big help if he ever returns. But they need more out of the left outside linebacker, and they need more out of the inside linebackers when they're asked to blitz because they can't cover anything. So, but on the other hand, you're getting Cam Sutton's playing pretty well. Joe Haynes playing pretty well. Minka Fitzpatrick's really turned it around. Tremaine Edmonds is what Edmonds is. Pierre looks like he has some positive things. They play enough and they do enough to win games now, but this defense is going to actually have to improve if you want to beat the Baltimores of the world whenever games matter, or, beat the Kansas City Chiefs down the line, or the Tennessee Titans, even without, Derrick Henry. We're going to have to get production from more than 3 or 4 guys defensively.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can, these are things to work on. It's like you said, it's better to have these things to talk about and work on after a win than a loss.
Sure.
And this is the time of year to get it worked out, because the schedule is going to get nothing but worse after this weekend. So to that end, we'll talk about this week's matchup against the Detroit Lions. We went kind of way farther down the line than we usually do about the Ravens and everything else. So let's just talk for a second about this matchup against the Detroit Lions. Perch, I would say, any team in the NFL, Jacksonville, Detroit, they've had games this year where the Jets, where they looked good. They put it together. They had a solid half or two, and they managed to either win a game or two or take some teams down to the wire. Detroit, the cupboard is not completely bare in Detroit, but, is the biggest danger in this game that just natural kind of overconfidence the Steelers might have?
Yeah, it really shouldn't be, though. You're one win against an 0-8 team away from being in first place in your division right at the midpoint of the season. So, and you've got a home game, and there's no reason to be anything but focused on this game. And if you just go back and like we mentioned before, look at the Baltimore Ravens against the Lions. The Lions completely outplayed them, had them beat, and it took the longest field goal in the history of football.
And an officiating mistake. And an officiated mistake.
Exactly. For them to flip that game. And, they played real tough against the Vikings, who are a pretty solid team. They held their own against the Rams and the Niners, and they've been in a lot of games. And, if you look at their statistics offensively, right next to the Steelers in just about everything as far as points scored and yards per game and yards per play. The two offenses aren't, that far apart, because our offense isn't, a dominant unit in the league. Our defense needs to kind of, go do their thing. And Goff can get hot, at times. If you look at what he's done throughout the season, it's not been a very pretty season for him. He's probably been one of the, bottom 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the entire NFL, but he's had flashes here and there where he's played well throughout his career. But they just, that the Lions are a team that everything they do is, somewhat similar to the Steelers. It runs through their running backs and tight ends. They just don't have any talent on the outside. They really don't beat a lot of teams with their receivers. They don't throw the ball to their receivers a lot. They don't have a lot of talent. You look at the guys they have, there's not a real number one. Heller is probably not a real number 2 on a lot of good offenses in the league on that roster right now. So they should be somewhat limited, and it kind of puts into the Steelers' strength to stop the run and get Goff into, 3rd and long. And, hopefully we'll see TJ Watt getting Goff on Sunday on TV.
You just can't help it.
Put it in there.
You just like Ben, came up big at the last second. FC, besides overconfidence, injuries also a little bit of a factor. Chase Claypool, there were rumors that they were concerned, some of this MRI business with his toe and his foot, they were concerned it was an actual Liz Frank fracture, but apparently it's not. It's a Liz Frank sprain, I think. So it could be anything from, a couple of weeks and he feels normal, or it could be that he's out a month. But regardless, even with Chase Claypool, guys weren't really getting open aside from maybe Deontay Johnson. So, what will the Steelers do here? They're going to bring up Anthony Miller. What do you think about their wide receiver situation? Could it cause them problems on Sunday?
Oh, it could be a problem. We are still a wide receiver, dependent offense in a way. James Washington,
who?
If you want to have a future in the NFL and get a chance at even a semi-decent contract with another team, here's your opportunity. Cody White, I think, has earned some playing time from his past games. He seems to play hard, willing blocker, made some plays. It's going to be a trust factor with Ben. I think Canada, this would be a great week for him to show a few different things in the passing game. Maybe try to incorporate Najee Harris in a different manner. Maybe show, a few different things with Fairmouth. They may get Ebron back. As much as we don't like hearing that, he has playmaking ability. It's a week-to-week league. If Anthony Miller is, worked hard and he's talented. I liked him for the Bears. I liked him in Memphis. I thought he was a quality wide receiver. Mentality and mental issues have been what's held him back in the NFL. And maybe spending some time on a practice squad, making a smaller check, may have hit home with him. And he realizes that he has to give a little bit more if he wants to, play, in the NFL. Other than that, offensive line is where it's going to make or break the season in the game. So if they give Ben time, he'll find open receivers. And that's the only thing you can hope for. The Claypool injury with the foot, you never know. Anyone that's ever injured a foot can tell you that, it hurts and it aches. And he's a pretty big man. Like we were saying with Derrick Henry the week before. So time will tell. Yeah,
I mean, you mentioned Eric Ebron coming back. To me, it's like now that you've lost Juju and Claypool, I think you'd be glad you have Eric Ebron for a few snaps because, between Ebron and hopefully a guy like Miller, you have guys that can contribute. They don't need to be counted on to be the focus of your offense, but they're going to need some help with bigger guys in the slot for certain matchups, especially Miller's a good blocker. He's a good guy to have on the field if you want to have some run pass options in early downs, as they, of course, do. So Steelers, Perch, are we ever going to see a Steelers second and long where they don't run the football? I mean, I know actually the actual statistics are that overall they run it almost 60% of the time on second and long, which is fifth highest in the league. But it's hard to believe that it's only that much. It feels like it's every second and long. So that must include a lot of 2-minute drives and times when you're down 2 touchdowns or whatever. But I don't know. What do you think about the possibility of doing a little bit more of that and maybe seeing a little bit more McFarland? What can they do on offense now that they've lost Claypool to kind of pick up the difference? I know you mentioned using Najee a little bit differently.
So you're saying running Benny Snell for 1 yard on second 19 is not ideal. I'm going to give me a second here to put that in my notes. No Benny Snell on second and 19. Yeah,
nothing waves the white flag. Nothing waves the white flag for your series like handing it off to Benny Snell on second and 19. No.
You could just stop when you said handing it off to Benny Snell, because that's pretty much all you need to end that sentence with. But yeah, I mean, I could see, well, hey, we've got McFarland and he's fast, and if he gets through the initial line and they don't have a lot of linebackers, maybe he hits the seam and busts it for 14 yards and puts you in third manageable. But where the hell's the running back screen? Where's some sort of, you see these other teams what do people do against the Steelers? They dump it off to a running back and they pick up 12, and now it's third and short and third and manageable, and we hand it off, try to trick people, and it never tricks anybody. And I don't know. I'd like to see some more running back screens and some other plays like that, or just run a route, an 8-yard out, get it into third and manageable where you can make, 8 yards twice and pick up your 16 yards and that sort of thing. But I kind of wanted to go back to Eric Ebron.
Oh yeah.
I think it's no coincidence that the 4-game winning streak and the improvement in the run game kind of coincided with his ass on out there whiffing on blocks. I think the only way to use him coming back, I think if you're going 2 tight end sets, it's got to be Freiermuth and Gentry. But I would like him as kind of a slot receiver, in that role. That should be his role. he should not be an inline tight end ever again for this team, and he'll be gone at the end of the season. But the guy can't block. But he's athletic, like you mentioned, and he can get open and he could drop passes and catch a couple on occasion on accident. But I don't want to see him come back and say, well, hey, Eric Ebron was our starter when he got hurt. He's coming back and he's the starter. I don't think they'll take Freiermuth out with as well as he's played, but maybe they try to put him in the 2 tight end set. Don't like that. But, James Washington on the outside, I think, will be fine. I think the bigger issue is every key third down in the game, I know for 100% fact, Ben's thrown it to Deontay Johnson. I think the other teams are going to catch on to that pretty quick, too, and start clamping him up. Somebody else has got to start to contribute, and maybe Ebron can be, for this game or in future weeks, a move tight end or a big slot guy that can create some mismatches against a nickel corner. But I'm curious to see how he's used going forward when he's back.
Yeah, and FC, I think Freiermuth is a guy that he's growing the trust to throw it to him. It's just that he's not a guy that's going to pick up 19 yards on 3rd and 14. But it does feel like a guy that's started to take charge of that position. What'd you make of Freiermuth's development at this point as a receiver?
I don't think there's too much more development that can take place. I mean, I think he's more than solid. I think he's very good in the passing game. I don't think he's going to improve a ton in the run game, but I think he's pretty good. I think that Perch was onto something with not lining Ebron up in line anymore and, splitting him out like a slot, maybe using him the way the Bears use Jimmy Graham, or actually the way Detroit uses Hockenstein. He's not in line as nearly. They'll have him, in a bumper car, split out. And that's what he's best at. He's a weapon in the passing game. Ebron's never been a good blocker. He had one new parts of blocking in Detroit, one new parts of blocking whenever he played in North Carolina. He is a big slot receiver, and that's how they should use him. Going back to creativity, I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone in the passing game for Najee Harris. Maybe trips to one side of the field and look like you're going to give them more help with the other tight end and slide Najee Harris out on the wheel route on the sideline with either a strong safety or an inside linebacker covering him. And I don't think they can run with him. I think Canada's got some things left in the playbook. I don't think we're going to see a ton versus Detroit, and that might end up being a mistake. But the weapons that we have, I think, are good enough to win this week, and that's the only thing that the Steelers can really worry about.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, that situation with receivers has been really, a underlying issue to a lot of things this year. They haven't really lived up to their billing in terms of, what we expected as an overall group. I think before the season, people would have said the Steelers have a really deep group and there are a lot of, playmakers there and so on and so forth. But it's been, a little bit of pulling teeth to get that stuff. To your point about using Najee differently, one thing I noticed, you watch some other teams in the NFL, there's a lot of teams that are now using the motion across, motion across the formation, not just to see, is it man, is it whatever, but to actually scheme that guy open who's in motion. This is something that the Steelers don't seem to be doing very much. I would imagine that if you put Najee out in the slot and then bring him back and people think, okay, now he's going to reset and be the running back, but instead he crosses the formation, chances are he's got a gap there and can make some plays. I see other teams doing that kind of thing. I know creativity is not really allowed with the Steelers offense. Perch, let's talk about the defense for the Steelers for a second. I don't think any of us here are real Jared Goff believers, but he's not as incompetent as some of the other Detroit quarterbacks that may have been seen. And he's, maybe not having the greatest season with that lack of talent around him. But do you think Detroit can figure out a game plan here since the Steelers will be intent on keeping the game close? Can the Lions stay in it?
Absolutely. We've seen every Steelers get. Can the Steelers beat anybody by 8 points or more? That's the bigger question. It's not like, we've got some high-powered offense or we have some great closing power once we do get a lead to put a team down. It's just the opposite. Everybody kind of comes back into the game. I just think that where, the lines are limited, and it's not so much with Goff, but it's just they don't have a lot of talent on the outside. I mean, what receiver scares you there? I mean, I think, when our Steelers receivers are healthy, we might have 4 guys better than everybody they've got. So it really comes down to what they do with Hawkinson and then the running backs, Swift and Williams and those guys. That's kind of where Detroit has some danger on their offense. And, it's another team that if you get a lead on and you can kind of take away the short stuff and the run game, they don't have a ton to scare you with downfield, and their offensive line's not great, and we've got enough edge rushers that we can wreak some havoc on their game plan if we get a lead and don't give up stupid passes over our head into single coverage.
Yeah, I mean, FC. What will Detroit try to do? I actually I have seen them play a little bit this year, but much like the Steelers, I'm not really sure what their intentions are on offense. It's a sort of like a grab bag-ish offense to me. What do you make of what you think?
They are going to try to lock down T.J. Hawkinson on one of our inside linebackers in coverage. They are going to attempt to get Swift or Williams on Edmonds or one of our inside linebackers in coverage. They're going to clear out zones to make sure that those guys have one-on-one matchups in space, and they're going to force the Pittsburgh Steelers to tackle and make plays in space, make plays on the ball. The thing that the Steelers are going to have to do is they're going to have to heat up Jared Goff. Good Jared Goff is like similar to Neil O'Donnell, where if he has a clean pocket, he'll spin it into an area, and he'll make plays. If you make Jared Goff's heart rate, go up a little bit, he's a little bit more like, I don't know, we'll say Mike Tomczak, or even worse than that, Kent Graham, where he'll make some boneheaded plays just to, get rid of the ball. I completely agree that on the outside, on paper, Detroit doesn't have a ton of threats. Raymond, their one starting wide receiver, I'm not sure if he can make 27 or 28 teams rosters. But if you give him time, you give him space, the Steelers do have a propensity to drop coverages at the worst of times. So basically the Steelers' main goal defensively should be do your job. Don't do nothing more. Don't do nothing less. Just do your job.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a game for the fundamentals. It feels like it's like, look, do your job, tackle the catch, keep everything in front of you, and it's going to be very hard for that team to do something special to beat you. Perch, I ask you this every time the Steelers play a really bad team. I'm hoping that someday I'm going to get the definitive answer that will carry me the rest of my life, and I'll never have to ask this question again. What would have to happen in this game for the Detroit Lions to have a chance to actually win against the Pittsburgh Steelers?
The same things that happen every week. Turnovers is big. We just, we can't give up cheap points. We can't have Ray McLeod get a ball stripped from him and the other team run it back on a kickoff or a punt for a cheap touchdown. I mean, that sort of thing can't happen. Ben can't, have stupid Ben show up and throw an interception right into a defensive back's arms and give him a good field position. And, our defense can't get a lead and then just melt down and let things kind of come back. But I mean, if you look at it, like I said, Detroit's offense and our offense, explosiveness and points and that sort of thing, neither of them are great. I mean, neither of them are going to put up a ton of points. Our defense is going to have to make big plays and our offense can't give stuff up. It's got to be a very clean, sort of a game. But Goff's been sacked like 23 times already this year. If we could just slow down the first and second down stuff their run, cover Hawkinson and get him in third and long, we get a few good hits on Goff and either a strip sack or, force him into a quick read and throw in a pick. I mean, that sort of thing can start to snowball and we could really put them away. And maybe the Steelers can win their one game this season by, more than 8 points. We'll see. That spread was 9, some to 8.5, something like that. It's hard to see the Steelers favored by that much, just knowing how they play.
Yeah, 100%. 100% agree. So we're going to come back and talk about our Steelers predictions for what will happen in this game in just a minute. But first, let's go on to our exciting NFL pick segment brought to us by.
Oh, Mike Perry, referee, bad. Gene Santor, bad. Chico's bail bonds, good. And Jeremy's the extra point on
8:30 a.m. in Los Angeles. That's the station, and at time 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday morning before the game. There you go. There's a plug. There's the plug for Jeremy. I'd also like, as a shout out to Perch, I'd like to say that the also brought to us by the NFL taunting penalty and the college targeting rule. But, hey, listen, we kind of running long today, so let's just make the college segment kind of quick. I just have a couple of things that are SEC related for you guys. Texas A&M still has a bit of a shot. They need an Alabama loss, but they have a shot to maybe win their division and make it to the SEC championship game, where they will get probably crushed by Georgia. But so for this week, playing Mississippi, tight game. How do you see this, Perch?
I'm just going to go ahead and be a little contrarian here. I'm going to take Mississippi to win straight up.
Wow. I'm shocked. FC, what do you think? You're picking against somebody in the SEC who's not a favorite. I'm shocked.
Right. It's going to be an interesting game. I don't think that Texas A&M's defense is quite quick enough. And the one thing that Ole Miss has done is gotten healthier on offense, despite Matt Corral being a mess. But their defense is beginning to get healthy. So I'm going to agree with Perch. And I'm going to take Ole Miss over Texas A&M in this Wolfman as well.
I'm taking the better quarterback, Texas A&M, to win this game in Mississippi. No, I mean, just kidding. Anyway, the thing about this game is it's sort of like we all have to be rooting for A&M though, because otherwise we're just going to get Alabama, Georgia again, and I'm not really sure. It's kind of like it's so chalk in the SEC the last few years. There hasn't really been any kind of big wallenge to Alabama.
Wait, are you saying you don't want to see Alabama, Georgia? I think we need to remove you from this program. Who doesn't want to see Alabama, Georgia? Come on.
My
wife. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say I'll put it this way. Probably Alabama is the one team that could beat Georgia, right? So maybe we do want to see that just to try to mix it up.
I really hope not.
Yeah, I know. You won't have a place to live, so this will be a problem. The other SEC related question is, it's sort of SEC and ACC related question. Speaking of the aforementioned Alabama, they are playing. I lost track of it for a second here. They are playing. Help me out, kids. A severe underdog. New Mexico State. They're hosting New Mexico State in the middle of November for God knows why. But New Mexico State needs the money. Can't really feel too bad for them. But they are a 50-point favorite over New Mexico State, right? Clemson is playing UConn. UConn is a 38-point underdog. I'm going to start this. Here's what I want to know. Which game is going to have the larger margin of victory? Are they both going to cover? I think they will both cover, but I'll tell you this. Clemson is going to have a bigger margin of victory against UConn. UConn is one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in all of the FBS. I don't know. These big spreads are fun, but like imagine sweating out a couple of late garbage scores on a 50-point point spread. Perch, what do you think about these big point spreads and who will cover?
Didn't UConn just hire Jim Mora or something? Did I see that on the ticker yesterday?
Wow.
Okay, yeah. UConn's awful, but Clemson's not that good this year.
They are not.
What was the other game you mentioned?
Alabama and New Mexico State.
With the rare 60-point spread.
Yeah, I would say that's going to be the bigger spread, just because Clemson will do okay. They're not that. I mean, they're not that good of a team this year. So I'm not picking that game. I'll go with the other one. New Mexico's pretty bad too.
I mean, Alabama's going to play their third quarterback by about the second quarter. FC, what do you see in this?
I actually think that Alabama actually has a better chance of covering the spread, and it's because Clemson's offense, even if they really, 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 really get going, they probably are going to score 35 points. Because it's bad. They're young. They had injuries.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would still probably take Alabama.
No,
and I would lay the 60. Holy fuck, that feels dirty.
Listen, UConn, UMass, and Maine are the three worst teams in the FBS. I would lay wager on it. Just bet them to lose and not cover every week, and you will be a rich man by the end of the season. They're really bad.
Well, here's something funny. UConn has a draftable prospect.
Who's their prospect?
Their left tackle is very draftable. That's the only thing I will say.
Well, he's getting a lot of practice going backwards because they're often behind. Yeah. Anyway, okay. I just thought that for fun. We'll talk about some stupid, crazy matchups. But Perch, is there a Big Ten game we should talk about? I in all seriousness, we got to have at least one.
I was just about to stop the show here. We got to talk about the best conference in college football now that we're done with the SEC. But I do believe you will see the second crying Harbaugh of the week. I think Penn State is not only going to beat Michigan. You're going to beat them by more than a touchdown. I'm going to go, give me Penn State. Let's go 27-16 Penn State, big win.
How about you, FC? Penn State has an SEC defense. I think they're going to win the game 24-13 behind that defense and behind Brisker and Joey Porter Jr.
Okay. Are you guys seated? Everybody have take a deep breath. I'm picking Penn State to win the game over Michigan. It hurts. It pains me. I feel like, something really, portent of doom coming. But yes, maybe that's a bad sign for Penn State. If I pick them, they may not do that well. Anyway, I'll take Penn State also. So we all like Penn State. We love Penn State. And moving on to the NFL quickly.
I don't think it's a matter of us outside of Perch loving Penn State. It's that we fucking hate Michigan. There's the difference between those two things.
It's easy to do that. It's easy to hate Michigan, especially with the word. He's the lesser evil Harbaugh, though. I mean, let's get that straight. The guy with the Ravens, his brother, is the worst. Just the look that he makes every time that there's a penalty call against his team, that it can't possibly be a penalty against us. You have to be kidding me. Anyway, he's the John McEnroe of NFL coaches. I don't know, Perch. It's not a big banner week, I would say, in the NFL. But let's talk about Browns at New England Patriots. It's impossible to figure out anything in the AFC right now. What do you make of this Cleveland traveling to New England matchup? Is Cleveland's redemption back on? Are we back in that Baker Mayfield cycle? What's happening?
Tell you what, that's going to be a huge game in the playoff picture. I mean, you look at the AFC right now, and 7 teams are going to make the playoffs. There's 11 teams that have a winning record, and they're all lumped together. And these sort of games are going to be what really separates it. Patriots defense is good. Belichick, he's kind of got his formula back, where he's got a quarterback who's eliminating mistakes, and they're playing tough defense. But I just think Cleveland's got enough firepower on that offense with the run game and everything. I know that Chubb, I think, is banged up again, and but I think the Browns are the better team, but I can't put it past the Patriots. I think the Patriots are 2.5-point favorites. Boy, that's a tough one. I think the Browns are just a better team. I think the Browns win it by 3. It would be my pick on that.
FC, how about you?
I'd like to remind you, week 1 of the podcast, when we predicted all of our division winners, there was one of us that predicted the New England Patriots to win that division, and that would be me. I will take the New England Patriots 23-13 over the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, I'd just like to point out the Patriots, if I'm not mistaken, have beat the Jets twice and the Dolphins once. That's their 3 of their 4 wins. I don't believe in the Browns at all, and I certainly believe in the New England coaching putting their team in the best position to win this game. I've had like Perch. I think it's a really tough game to pick because on one hand, I think the Patriots will keep the Browns from doing some of the things they like to do best, running the football. But I also feel like Myles Garrett is enough of a disruption for a sort of stationary quarterback where it's going to take a lot of scheming for a team like New England to make hay. So I'm liking the under, and in a close game, I guess. I wanted to take the home team, but man, I'm violating all my rules because normally I would say better quarterback, better home team, better quarterback, better coaches. But I feel like it's kind of even in most of those regards. And Browns maybe have a little bit stronger team. I don't know. It pains me to say it. I think the Browns. FC, did you pick this or did I skip you?
I picked it. I picked the Patriots.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You did because you love you love the Patriots.
I do.
Kansas City Chiefs at the Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas is looking for another person to eject from their organization so that they can keep their streak alive. I'll start with you. What do you make of this? The Chiefs finally getting it together after their dominating win. I'm kidding. Last week. Or the Raiders about to implode because of everything that's happened to them. How do you see this game? Speaking of tough ones to pick.
Wow. Every year it seems the Raiders knock off the Chiefs. And if somehow, some way the Raiders beat the Chiefs this week, God, are the talking heads around the NFL, their heads are going to explode. I'm going to take the Chiefs to win by a touchdown, but I'm really leery. If Andy Reid didn't win that Super Bowl, I think there'd be a decent chance of him talking about him getting fired after the year. He ain't going to because he won that Super Bowl. But boy, are they a fucking mess on both sides of the ball. Their offense has been solved. I don't know how, but it's been solved.
Yeah. that is for sure. I don't know, Perch, how do you see this?
Yeah, FC nailed the same thing I was going to say was, boy, the last 2 years, the Raiders have played the Chiefs tougher than anybody. They kind of built their team to be able to attack and beat the Chiefs. Primetime game, home, just a huge game for both teams for playoffs. Where somebody's got to win that division, and somebody's going to try to sneak in as a wild card out of that division. Another huge game, just like the Cleveland New England game. I just, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, right? I mean, they've been to 2 straight Super Bowls. They've got Mahomes, who's probably still, he's having a bad year, the most talented player in the league. You got to think at some point they kind of flip the switch, and the Raiders kind of turn into the Raiders at some point. They start okay, and then they kind of fall apart. So I might be dead wrong on this. Kansas City's favorite on the road. I think the Chiefs win by a touchdown and kind of start their march to taking over that division as the Chargers and Raiders do what they usually do, and the Broncos too, and they all start fading back a bit.
I was kind of where you were, Perch, a few days ago, but here's the thing I started thinking about. Darren Waller, Daniel Sorensen. And I just feel like we're going to get that matchup in this game because, the chances of Matthew covering Darren Waller are pretty much nil. So that matchup really favors the Raiders, and that's the guy that's the go-to guy for them. So if you don't really have somebody that you can dedicate to taking that guy, and limiting his chances in the game, I think unless his health kicks in again and he's not able to continue or something like that, I think the Raiders win this game, shockingly. I think the Chiefs maybe go on this late season run, but I'm not sure it starts this week. And one last thing, Green Bay and Seattle, looks like we're going to have both starting quarterbacks, although there was some doubt about either of them up until yesterday. Now, Russ Wilson announced as the starter, but as far as I know, Aaron Rodgers hasn't cleared protocol yet. So unless you guys know something different that I don't know, but expecting that it's going to be Rodgers. Seems like a big matchup. Packers, you need a bounce back from last week's bad showing, and the Seattle needs a win desperately. What do you make of this, FC?
Wow. It's another toughie. I'm going to shockingly take the Seattle Seahawks. And the reason I'm going to take the Seahawks is I don't like the way the Green Bay Packers reacted to the adversity. Now, I know that they didn't get blown out, and I understand that they didn't have their quarterback, and I understand Devontae Adams is a little bit dinged. But losing Robert Tonyan is going to end up being a pretty big deal for the Packers.
Yep.
I'm not in love with Aaron Jones. I think Seattle's going to do just enough defensively, and I think DK Metcalf may take it over the game. So I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks, but I really wouldn't bet this game.
Yeah, exactly. I'd stay away from it as well. I think there's just too many things that can happen. But I would play not Chris Carson, Aaron Jones in fantasy, and I would pick Seattle, I think, in this game. I think the Green Bay becomes a lot easier to defend when they don't have Tonyan. When he was out earlier, they won games, but I think they had some interesting struggles where they didn't have that middle of the field option because they don't really have anybody else who's good at that. Perch, how do you see this game?
I think, for the record, I think Rodgers, his time is up on the COVID thing on Saturday, so he's fine and he'll be officially cleared Saturday to play.
He has to pass a medical test, and they say there's still a chance he won't play. I just read it seconds ago. So,
I just think the Packers are a much better team than Seattle overall, top to bottom. I think that Russell Wilson's coming off of a surgically repaired finger, and Aaron Rodgers is coming off a mild cold. So, game in Green Bay, I think the Packers win by 10. Honestly, I think it's a 30-20 game, and Packers win big, and Rodgers comes out and kind of has a statement game.
Yeah. Do you think Aaron Rodgers spent his off week doing mental reps on the field in front of the cameras? I don't think so. Or maybe he went down to the local park and he pretended he was playing against. You
think he needed it? He probably just took a little time to rest his body in the middle of the season. And I mean, it's not like he's not a mentally sharp quarterback that doesn't know what's going on. He'll be fine. I mean, let's see how Wilson throws a ball with a splint in his finger, and and how much has he worked out the past month since he's been out?
Yeah, good questions. Hey, let's move on and talk about our 5-star matchup, because everyone knows Detroit and Pittsburgh. That's a 5-star matchup, but you could tell from the TV maps this week that it's basically like a tiny little area of Western Pennsylvania and a tiny little bit of Michigan. That's who's seeing the game, unless you've got some way to stream it or DirecTV or whatever. So anyway, Steelers hosting the Detroit Lions. FC, help me out. Tell me what is going to happen in this game.
I believe the Steelers are going to win the game 23-14. They're going to give up a bullshit touchdown. I hope that fucking Ray McLeod doesn't fumble again. I was really hoping to read that Ray McLeod and Millette got replaced on the roster, but I knew that was overly optimistic. So I'll take the Steelers 23-14. I should probably be saying 26-21 in the Steelers blowout, but I'm not going to steal Perch's thunder.
Maybe I'll let Perch have the thunder at the end. I will say that I harken back to the preseason game, and you see what that was the game that Ben sort of picked apart Detroit in the red zone and threw those two probably the prettiest passes he's thrown all season to Freiermuth. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of Pat Freiermuth in this game in a good way for the Steelers. I think they will hit 30 points for the first time. I'm going to call it 31-15 to Detroit, and that the 15 might even be sort of garbagey. I think there's a perfect storm for Detroit. It's the team. It's a kind of defense with the pass rush that the Steelers have that should be a problem for them. Yes, I worry a little bit about the tight ends and running backs, but Steelers have actually been pretty good against tight ends and running backs lately, despite the fact that, their inside linebackers don't seem to be playing that well. So anyway, I'll take the Steelers in an actual game where they beat a big point spread. I know it's a mistake, but I'm going to do it anyway. Perch, tell us, use your crystal ball.
Well, my crystal ball says I am a law of averages guy, and Detroit is not going to go 0-17 this year, so they got to win at some point. Okay, why not this week? Then I kind of remember that preseason game. The best Ben's looked in years is, remember he went out there and just lit up Detroit there, and that kind of gave me a little bit of a hope that maybe we see Ben have, his patented big game or a big 5-touchdown game. And then I figured, that's definitely not going to happen because the Steelers never win big. But the Steelers, when it comes down to it, there's too many mismatches between the Steelers defense and the Lions offense. So I do believe the Steelers will score a whopping 23 points. The Lions will have 17. Drive the ball into the red zone late in the game. The Steelers will get one final stop to hold on to that 6-point win. So 23-17 Steelers in a laugher.
Oh, the coach is going to be so happy with that result, Perch. That's his kind of game. By the way, I had the pleasure of watching the game last week with the New York City Steel, NYC Steel, who's somebody who's been around on the board for a really long time, and I think even Steelers before that, but doesn't, not a big poster, but somebody who follows along. And I said to him, they had that Steelers got a turnover and they got the ball. And the announcer said something along the lines like they always do of, after this quick change, maybe the Steelers will attack. And I said, they're going to run the ball off the, up the middle, because in their coach's mind, that's attacking the defense when their team is down. It's like, we had this quick change, we got a turnover, and now we're going to attack you by running the ball up you. So that's something to keep in mind, is that this is coach, his idea of attacking is and of playing the perfect game is kind of what they've been playing. That's like what they try to do. Anyway, last word, Perch, I'll give one to you.
First place, baby. That's all. Got to win. Got to get first place this week. And who would have thought after 9 weeks, after we were 1-3, we'd be, a win against the hapless Lions away from first place in the division.
Yeah, that's rather amazing. Here. FC, how about you?
Anybody from Pittsburgh that's bitching about the rain, number one, you live in Pittsburgh, and number two, it's been raining like that nonstop here for the last 2 fucking weeks.
How's your arc coming along?
Yeah, I'm not a very good carpenter.
Do you know what
Flex Seal?
Do you know what a cubit is? I also do, but it depends how long your forearm is. Some cubits are longer than others. I'll make
That's what she said.
My last word is going to be about the 2014 NFL draft. Jadeveon Clowney was the first pick overall to Houston. The third pick, Khalil Mack. Sixth, or he was the fifth rather. Sixth pick, Jake Matthews. Then Mike Evans. Then Justin Gilbert. Anthony Barr. Taylor Lewan. Odell Beckham. Kyle Fuller. Ryan Shazier. Zach Martin. C.J. Mosley. I mean, a lot of, at the minimum, good starters there. Some Pro Bowlers, some All-Pro players. But the thing that really will get you is Eric Ebron, 10th pick in the NFL draft that year. And a guy going at 13 was Aaron Donald. Can you imagine that Eric Ebron went 3 picks ahead of Aaron Donald? I if you want to believe
I remember that draft, and
I told you guys Aaron Donald was going to be an all-timer. I told you back then.
You absolutely
go back to the podcast.
No, not only is that true, Perch, that you thought he was going to be an all-timer, but I wanted the Steelers to draft him as their edge player, to feature their, to be the feature of their defense. I think he could have been more than that. It could have been a guy that played edge sometimes and, scooted inside other times, depending on what other personnel you had. I mean, if you think about what they gave up to get Devin Bush, that they were not able to move up a couple of spots to get Aaron Donald is amazing. Like could they have moved up all the way to 10? And Eric Ebron still be available when the Steelers when their slot came up at 16 or 15? I mean, I think they probably could have moved up a couple of spots to get him. I mean, yes, Ryan Shazier, great player, and they really needed that pick and so on and so forth. But But man, you got a chance to get Aaron Donald, and you're only a couple of picks away, and you can't make that deal. That's going to haunt you. I think.
I'm no Pitt fan, but Aaron Donald should have won the Heisman. That guy was so dominant. Every snap, double teamed in college, in the backfield, every play. It was remarkable how dominant that guy was in a college football game. I think I've seen close to that was like Ndamukong Suh when he was dominating when he was in college. But I think Donald was just another notch up. But you remember, though, I mean, he was listed at, maybe 6 foot, 280 pounds, and he's a defensive tackle. There was some question on where you would put him, but there was never any question on how dominant that guy was going to be.
He's so much better than, Chris Zorich would be another one that was compared to him. Rob Waldrop, going back a long time. And he was just so much better of a player than both of them.
I mean, I think actually the Ndamukong Suh hurt Donald because people said, well, see, he was so dominant in college and then you got him in the NFL and he was a good player, but it's not worth it. And I think maybe that hurt Aaron Donald's chances because they were like, hey, look, he's smaller. He's not as good as Ndamukong Suh, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that guy's a freak of nature and is that dominant in the NFL as much as he was in college. Anyway, gentlemen, SteelPerch, Dom, known as FC, all of you who are listening, NY Steel, for joining the crowd here at Shea B2B. And all of you listening, hey, hit the like button, subscribe for us, give us a review. It helps other people find out about the show. And in the meantime, we're going to talk next week after a big Steelers victory. I am your host, Wil Masisak, a.k.a. Bradshaw DeBan, also known as Accidental Zen on Twitter, saying, go get them, Steelers.
Here we go.
Steeler Fury.